couldn't imagine that our own government would be lying to us. That was difficult.
Preparedness seems to be the price of peace.
My father served in the Royal Navy and served at Christmas Island. He experienced 24 detonations in 78 days.
What could they have learned at the 24th test they didn't know at the first one, or at the 900th test that they didn't already know?
I could see all the bones and tendons and blood lines in my hands with my eyes shut and my fists pushed into my face. No effects were expected or described what might happen.
2 tumours as big as melons almost.
I got bowel cancer, essential tremors, pulmonary disease.
It wasn't just the nuclear test veterans who were affected by this.
This is where the actual blast zone was.
The testing bomb, Blue Island, wipe out ocean. If you go there, it's ocean, black.
We're up against a major, major establishment. We believe that we can take this further.
Withholding someone's medical record is a criminal offence.
There was a big gap, a 9-month gap. Why? It's my life, my medical records.
We need to tell them that we're not going away, and that instead of the pool of people dying, the pool of people is getting larger and larger.
He knew the world would not be the same.
Welcome to Talent Freaks. I'm Andy, a filmmaker and photographer based in the Bay Area of California. And today's guest is Daniel Everitt-Lock, a British documentary filmmaker and award-winning cinematographer based between London and Toronto. And he directed the powerful 2026 feature, Our Planet, the People, My Blood, which chronicles nuclear veterans advocate Alan Owen's fight against the UK Ministry of Defence for justice and compensation, weaving stories from affected communities across 4 continents. With background in visually striking cinematography on acclaimed shorts like Purgatory Jack and Challenger, Daniel masterfully blends intimate personal narratives with global environmental and political themes. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. It helps this creative community grow and means I get to keep bringing you more stories from the front lines of innovation. All right. Thank you, Daniel, for joining me today on Talent Freaks.
Cheers, Andy. Thanks, mate.
Yeah. So I watched your documentary, which was incredibly powerful for me. And I want to jump into your documentary and kind of get the idea of when you first caught wind of this story, what was it like for you? And explain to us, how it impacted you and why did you start this documentary?
Yeah. So, I mean, about 9 or 10 years ago, I saw this short documentary called "What a Nuclear Weapons Explosion Feels Like," and it was made by this Dutch filmmaker called Morgan Nib. And I actually spoke with Morgan before we started this, so I got a little bit of background on this documentary as well. He was working for Vice at the time, and he pitched this documentary to Vice, and they said they're not interested because it's all about old people. They didn't want it. So he actually went out and on his own dime made this. Right, it's crazy. He went out and made on his own dime. He made the film, and then brought it back to Vice, and they said, actually, this is pretty good. We'll buy it. So they bought it off him, and it ended up being Vice's most viewed video ever. So it says something about this thing. What it was saying in this short was it was these nuclear veterans who had experienced the bomb. A lot of them standing 20 miles away from a thermonuclear detonation, whether it's in Marshall Islands, Australia, whatever kind of thing. And they talked about being stood there with their hands over their eyes, with their eyes closed, and the flash of the nuclear weapon being so bright that they could see the X-ray of their hands, all the sinews and muscles and tendons in their hands of that and the people in front of them through their closed eyes. And that just kind of stuck with me as this crazy visual that really kind of got me intrigued. And that it basically kind of led to me like thinking about, well, how come I've never heard of any of this before? You know, it was never in kind of like my education or anything at all, that kind of thing. And you know, being in like my early to mid 20s, it was kind of like, this is kind of odd that this hasn't actually like, you know, been on the radar before. And I've spoken with lots of friends and family about it and kind of shared this video around, and no one had heard about it either, and they were kind of just as shocked as I was. And it was this kind of weird thing of like, how do people not know about this? Um, at least how come it's not more like common knowledge, you know? And so I was like, well, this would make an amazing documentary. And at the time, I didn't really have much documentary experience. It was more in just scripted um, as a cinematographer. So it was only really about 4 years ago that I actually approached this film when I'd got a little bit more experience in documentary as well as scripted.
Well, you could tell you're a cinematographer because it's beautifully shot. Like the interviews
Cheers.
are incredible. And I also liked what you did with, I'm not going to give away any secrets, but, the black and white and then go
Mm.
into color, but also the vignettes that you had with the blur vignettes. It really caught my eye and made me obviously focus, on
Mm.
the person. Um, but there were so many things about the documentary that make me think. So one of them was like, were you interviewing as well as the cinematographer? Did you have people there to help you do that aspect, or were you one man crew?
No, yeah, I mean, we were super like low budget shoestring on this thing. And because we're traveling all over the world as well, it was kind of like I can't have a big crew and we can't like be pulling people around and stuff. So actually, it was just myself and business partner Rodrigo Borda. We um, travel from country to country. And once we got to each country, we would hire a car, find the local rental house, fill the car with equipment, and then just drive around all of these different things. So, like in the US, for instance, we flew into San Diego, and then we traveled around 20 different states, and ended up did this huge circle from the south all the way up to the north and back down, and then flew over to Hawaii, and just got a car in each and got rental kit and buying. Um, I was obviously directing and interviewing the subject at the same time as running two cameras and pulling focus on two cameras and trying to operate the tighter angle, which we wanted on the inside. As it just I kind of wanted this more like intimate feel, so we put the tighter on the inside for a tighter eye line kind of thing. So it made it a little bit easier for operating and pulling focus as well. And then Rodrigo would be basically in charge of pulling everything out of the car, helping me set up lighting and all the grip and everything, and then running sound during the interview. And then he'd pack everything away while I'm kind of like debriefing with the subjects and stuff. And then we'd get on out of there and drive even more. We traveled 150,000 kilometers in the 2 years we were filming.
That's incredible. I mean, one of the things that I'm used to because I do corporate work as well.
Hmm.
A lot of times in Silicon Valley, if you're hired, you're either from a agency or you're kind of like a lone wolf where you could do everything.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I do 3 camera setups by myself. I have to monitor audio, do all those things. I can't imagine, especially with a documentary, like a focused because you have so many hats. Like you're looking, at least someone was monitoring the audio, which is awesome. But
Yeah.
how did you also emotionally handle the interview? Were you so involved in it that you might have missed something, or was it something where you were just like on point with everything?
I like to think I was on point. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, cheers. I mean, like, something like this, there's such a huge learning curve and amount of research that you have to do to kind of be on top of something like this because it is like, particularly how we were approaching it on a global scale. So there was like, it wasn't just a thing of like, okay, we're focused on uranium miners, for instance. Okay, now we've got to learn about, uranium mining and how that affected the communities around there kind of thing and what that process looks like and everything and how and why they were, what was happening with that uranium, how it's transported and all this kind of stuff. There was that, sure, but then we're also talking to the Hibakusha who survived, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're talking to downwinders all across the US, like from St. George and Salt Lake City. We're talking to, the Marshallese and their history and their culture as well, kind of thing. So there was a ton of research that I did preemptively, and then the whole time we were doing this journey and stuff, there was so much being learned and developing as we went, kind of thing. That I think I think I went into things very well prepared, or at least I hope so. Anyway, I don't know. And then really from there it was kind of I tried to keep things as conversational as possible and really try and connect with the person. So there was some pre-interview that I did beforehand, but I didn't really want to go too heavy on the pre-interview stuff. I kind of wanted to go more into these. I'm working on Amazon doc series at the moment where the pre-interviews are intense. Not as a director, as a cinematographer, but I know that their pre-interviews are incredibly intense, and they go into each of these interviews knowing exactly sound bites of what they want or what they need. Whereas this, I wanted to try and approach in a way that was more like, um, I know who they are, I know their experience, I know what's going on, but I don't. I want it to really be as authentic as possible. So going into this with the knowledge and as much research as possible, and then just trying to keep it conversational and so I think someone else could have got very different things out of those subjects for sure. Um, but yeah, I think that's then that would be their film. That's that personal element, I guess.
I'm glad you mentioned about Amazon because a lot of times, a lot of documentaries that come out now, outside of things that you did, they're very much as much as they're documentaries. They're also pretty well scripted. Like they know what they want, and they kind of will preempt and make sure that they get these certain sound bites, and it's kind of like a directed documentary, which is a weird thing to say because you directed this documentary. Um, but it doesn't feel as authentic. Like when you have people's voices leading you through the journey, it's so much different than having kind of like a voice of God or text or, some kind of other way of leading people through it. So the next question that I'm getting to is when I did documentaries, I realized that I look at documentaries almost as a tree. Like it grows, but then there are these branches that kind of just suddenly appear over here. What were some of the branches that appeared in this documentary that took you in a different direction?
uh, yeah, I mean, firstly, I'd just say to that as well. I think it's the nature of the business, though, isn't it? Kind of thing. When you look at like how things are structured now and stuff. There's so much data and so much like technical knowledge of what audience or what they believe audiences want, what they expect, kind of thing. That there's so many cooks in the kitchen as well, kind of thing, pulling those things together. And I think that's the difference with something like this is the freedom I had of not having to worry about that. The only person I answer to is me. And I get to make the film that I want to make, and then we put it out there. And if people enjoy it, or they learn something from it, or whatever, it makes some impact or whatever, then that's what it is. Whereas I think if we did end up getting financed by like an Amazon or a whoever, it would have been an entirely different story, and it would have been an entirely different film. You know, um, I think the kind of the tree branch thing was actually really a good analogy of it. Really, I think there's a lot of different threads, like so many. We originally approached this purely from the perspective of wanting to focus on nuclear test veterans and their story and their experience of the bomb and how that has affected them from a health perspective and this kind of mad experience and what's happened to them. But then when we met who ended up being our main subject, Alan Owen, who is the descendant of one of those atomic veterans, he introduced us to all of these different communities on a global scale that had been affected in different ways, all part of the nuclear chain of testing and development and scientists and actually use within wartime, which was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so there was like this bigger global scale that we saw, and he kind of his organization Lab Rats, um, he started as a way of connecting all of these global communities because he realized that all of them are after the same thing. They're after compensation, they're after recognition, they're after an apology. Um, for a lot of people, they haven't got that. Some communities have more than others and stuff, kind of thing. The UK is actually one of the worst, ultimately, strangely enough. Um, And so his idea of lab rats was he realized all these communities are after the same thing and none of them are communicating and actually working together to try and get those things. So he built lab rats as a way of doing that and connecting these communities and creating that kind of unity. And that was kind of really the inspiration for then the documentary of taking it, okay, well, instead of just focusing in on the atomic test veterans, let's actually make this global view. And the thing that seems to affect all of these communities is the fact that the burden of proof is put onto them by these governments and people that are basically trying to get them, well, okay, you're saying you've got cancer or genetic issues from this exposure, prove it. And you can't, you can't prove exactly that. But then when you look, our perspective on the thing was, if you look at this from a global scale and you see all these different communities affected in the same way and they're having the same results, it's quite clear that this has caused this. And that was that was obviously what we found, and that was obviously the case, kind of thing. But there was, from each community, each person, each subject, there was always tons of different things that came up that were like, that's insane. Like, I want to follow that. I want to know more about that. But then, and we did capture a lot of it. But then it's like ultimately you've got to fit it into a 90-minute feature kind of thing to, you know, you can't pull every thread. There's tons of parts that we didn't pull out that aren't in the documentary, like Project Sunshine, for instance, which is this is not going to be light, but it's about the an element of the U.S. government basically digging up and taking bones and testing them for strontium-90 without the consent of the parents or the families. It's this huge conspiracy. It's not a huge conspiracy. It's a huge issue that happened. That is well documented, and we didn't include that in the documentary. There's elements like that. That we also met this one incredible woman whose story was just so bonkers that I didn't feel we could like. It was kind of weird. It felt like it was so crazy. Even though it was all justified and true and stuff, it almost sounded like conspiratorial. And for me, there was one thing that I wanted to make sure with this film that it didn't come across as conspiratorial, because that would really do a disservice to all these people and what's happened to them, kind of thing. So it was really a major focus. So like I couldn't include her story in this film. Maybe it's something we approach another time, kind of thing. But like so it was. There's lots of things we didn't get to do.
By the way, thank you so much for everything. It's incredible what you did and the amount that you put into this documentary. And what I'm about to say says nothing about what you just did. This is more of a thing that I learned as a documentary filmmaker. A friend of mine, his name is Brian Conley, and when the U.S. Decided to go to war against Iraq, he decided to go to Iraq and educate some of the Iraqi citizens about shooting video and to document what the war was like on their behalf, like how their lives changed. And it wasn't anti-USA. It was more about what's going on in Iraq from their perspective. And it blew me away. And then he said something when he spoke at a film festival or a web festival. And someone asked him and said, why aren't you making this into a documentary? And his answer kind of like, it still sticks in my head. He goes, I can't sit and wait for this to go out while people are suffering or their lives are in jeopardy. And since it's a war, it's right now. Yours is different because it already happened. And then he said, everything that comes out needs to be out now to show what the people are going through, because it's immediate. It needs to change the perspective of what's going on. And this is the way I could help. And I was just thinking, what have you ever thought about putting like clips out that couldn't make the documentary to help kind of supplement it, or have other features with I don't know, some of the social media things that people would pay for extra things, to see extras? Or is that just not on the table? You want to make sure everything is, documentary style?
No. It's absolutely on the table. I mean, what? So, I mean, when I started this film, kind of approaching it as like a purely filmmaker. I'm not an
Yeah.
activist or anything kind of thing. That's not really me. But through this, it actually has kind of become this thing that have actually approached this more like an activist kind of thing by the end of it, because it became this thing about how ultimately, after working with these communities and stuff, and getting closer with them, and talking with them about all this kind of trauma and just terrible stuff that's happened to them, it was kind of like, well, what can I do to actually help? And the thing that I could do to help was, I can, I don't have any money to give, or I don't have any, like, I don't really even have much time to be able to give, kind of thing. But what I can do is I can bring, using my experience as a filmmaker, is bring as much attention through audiences, as many people as we can get this in front of as possible, to the issue. And then it's up to those guys and these organizations and stuff to leverage that attention into uh, whatever it is that they're doing for compensation, recognition, that kind of thing. So that kind of became the ethos, was to try and get this seen by as many people as possible. And a part of that is what we now do with the film, and what we do with all of the footage that we have. So like Alan, for instance, with Lab Rats, they realized that, like I realized when I watched that short doc, that there isn't an education, there isn't anything in education about this kind of stuff. It's kept out because ultimately don't really want you, governments and stuff don't really want you knowing about this kind of, like, the terrible things that they did to all these people and stuff ultimately. So their initiative is like educational, like putting in things about nuclear weapons testing into education, and that's something they're doing a lot in the UK, and it's going really quite successfully. And we have, for instance, we interviewed 50 people. I've got over 100 terabytes of, like, footage of all this stuff,
Whoa.
hours and hours and hours of incredible stuff. That the intention is, obviously, we have the 90-minute feature, which also have like a broadcast cut of it, kind of thing, as well, which is that my intention was always to do that, because I wanted to make something that is accessible to a more modern audience, that um you know caters to people with not a great attention span, which is more of a modern audience. So my theory was kind of like, okay, as much as this could be an entire TV series, and be this huge, like, 10-part, 1 hour 10 episode series kind of thing, no one's going to sit through all this incredibly depressing stuff for that amount of time. It's got to be shock and terrible stuff for 90 minutes, hold people for that, with a kind of modern, low attention span audience, and then you know get them to, hopefully it inspires people in the same way that it did me afterwards, to kind of look at this more and see and learn more about this kind of thing. Our intention, with all of the other footage that we have that didn't make that 90-minute cut, is then to use that, in conjunction with Alan and Lab Rats, to put it out into the world, kind of thing, and get it out in different ways, which we're already doing. There's a lot of things to focus on at the moment, but that is also in the works as well, which is great. We've got a couple of universities in the UK that are using different parts of footage and stuff that are going into educational things. I'm going to give all of the footage that we have to Lab Rats, after the official, like, release and everything, after the first window for the film. And Alan can use any of the footage however he likes, kind of thing. It becomes his property at that point.
That is very generous, and it's amazing what you've done with your own time. It's hard, especially these modern days, with how the economy is. Everything is so expensive, as far as living situations, as far as just everything living. So for you to do this at this time is incredibly generous, and I think you have an amazing heart. But also, you're extremely talented. So I know that you're going to be going places, from not only from this, but also the other work that you did. This documentary, stands by itself, just by the production that you put into it, the look, the feel, the emotions, everything about it. What were some of the things that, after you have the final edit, what were some of the things you wish you could have had more, or had lack of, if you did have any?
Oh, honestly, I actually feel this is some of my worst work as a cinematographer, which is really bad.
Wow.
I'm not. Yeah, if we'd have had, I did get some sponsorship from Panavision for this because my relationship with Panavision to be able to shoot certain elements of this with some of their equipment, which was great. I did, a major focus of mine with, as being a cinematographer is approaching everything in a way that I want things at like the maximum, like kind of look as good as it could. But because of insane money constraints, it's like the lack of time was insane. The lack of people and equipment and stuff and everything was just like ridiculous. So I'd have loved to, if we had, if I was in a better position from the beginning and we had more money kind of thing, I would have spent that on having more time to be able to really like flesh out the look a little bit more kind of thing. That would have been something for sure. That's my cinematographer brain kind of like, focusing on that. I think I would have loved to, I had a really good working relationship with a couple of really good editors that what I would have loved to have brought on. I think they would have brought a different element to things that would have elevated it even more. They did consult with me, which was great. One of them is actually an Oscar award winner, so he was really good. I would have
Oh,
loved to
wow.
have brought him on actually ultimately, but we couldn't afford it. So, not even close.
Yeah.
But that would have been something that would have been good for sure.
So have you has anyone approached you about like doing some TikTok videos or Instagram videos or those kind of things? And the reason why I ask this is because being working in corporate, sometimes like I work hard and make this like 5 minute short narrative about something. It's very emotional storytelling. And then social comes in, could you give us 30-second clip? And I'm like, it doesn't match up.
Yeah.
I've learned over the years to be like, I get it. It's more of like a teaser for the film or for the piece that I did. So are you putting out stuff to get people motivated or interested in your doc?
Yeah, I got one of our execs and stuff is really into his like social media and pushing that kind of thing and stuff. So he's been really good at like kind of forcing me to do that little bits and pieces. I've got to do more of it, which is just soul destroying. But it's the thing. And we recently signed a theatrical distributor. So we're actually releasing in cinemas in the UK on May 14th, and then we're in talks for some cinemas
Congratulations.
in the US. Cheers, thank you. And then in talks for some cinemas in the US as well, and France and Australia as well, weirdly, which it's great kind of thing. So those the distributor is kind of pushing pretty hard on like get working on those social media videos. That's the thing. Yeah,
So I'm gonna give you. Have you ever heard of the documentary girl?
documentary. No,
So she's on Instagram. She has like over 1 million followers, and she every time she watches documentaries, that's all she does. And
okay,
I think she would be awesome to like send a screen or two. And she normally starts off like, "Oh my God, I've never seen a more dramatic or emotional
okay.
documentary." It's almost every time she says that. It's great. But she gets a lot of movement and people talking about different documentaries.
Hmm.
Just to throw it your way.
Yeah, I'll have a look at that. Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting.
So I noticed there wasn't a lot of, or wasn't many, content with the governments. Obviously, they're not going to speak on this matter, but how hard was it to try to get that other side of the story from their perspective?
Yeah, outrightly impossible, honestly. We actually had we have a lot of connections to different politicians and stuff within the UK. There was, including like Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister and stuff as well. So we didn't have really any luck with that, but we did actually have a number of politicians that we did interview that ultimately just didn't make the cut much. There's a couple of little sound bites from them, which you wouldn't know who they were, kind of thing, but prominent uh, prominent politicians within the UK. We did try with the US as well, trying to get any of that was just absolutely impossible. We had a very close connection like a really close connection to Bill Clinton, which would have been a great one because he was the guy who did make the apology, the official apology, and stop the Official Secrets Act for the atomic veterans, so they could actually talk about what happened during the testing kind of thing. Because until that point in the early 1990s, they couldn't. So that was going to be an interesting thing. We didn't manage to get hold of it. Strangely enough, that apology was actually aired at exactly the same time as the O.J. Simpson trial, so no one saw his apology. Whether that was like tactical or not, who knows, kind of thing. But it's a bit of a shitter. So yeah, we did try. I think the most interesting interview, again, it didn't make the cut for a number of reasons. But one of the most interesting ones that was kind of like on the opposing side, and I didn't realize it was on the opposing side until we interviewed him, was this guy that had he'd worked very closely with Hanford, which is where it's a nuclear refinement site that was used for refining plutonium and stuff for the original nuclear weapons that were used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then a lot of the bombs that were used for testing for the US afterwards up in Washington State. And it is the most contaminated place in the whole of North America. It is a diabolical Chernobyl level disaster that is not very well known, despite how intensely bad it actually is. And one of the guys that we met who actually worked very closely with Hanford in documenting it kind of thing, he turned out to actually be, we thought he was very much on the pro side of this was a terrible thing. And then speaking to him more, he kind of, there were certain things that he'd obviously he was dancing around kind of thing. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And again, that kind of stuff will be coming out separately from the documentary, whether that's for marketing or for or education or whatever.
So it's interesting. So this is more of a historical documentary about the bombs happening. So there's a lot of similarity with the first documentary I did, besides the professionalism. It was the first documentary. I was learning on the fly. So it was terrible. It was like SVHS. I had a choice of different mics every time because it was always checked out. So onboard mic in a prison, it was awful. But one of the things, I interviewed the mayor of Greensboro about the tragedy of the 1979 Greensboro massacre, and it was funny, not funny, bad term. But when you said about how the government put that out with the O.J. Simpson trial, the same thing happened in 79 in Greensboro. There was an anti-Klan rally where 5 people were shot and killed in broad daylight. And they recorded it on TV. It was live. So people saw it in broad daylight. And it was national news. And then the next day, the Iranian hostage happened in America with America. So that took over the nation's news, and the other news kind of got buried. But it was one of those things when I talked to the mayor about it, he's like, why do you care? You were so young. And I'm like, what? Like, people were shot and killed by the Klan and Nazis, and that's not a problem to you? And what I learned from that interview when I left, I felt so talked down to. I felt terrible about myself, like I wasn't good, all these things, like never going to happen again. But when I brought it into the editing bay, I realized he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the audience. And I used it to my benefit. So every time when he was on screen, he was condescending. It sounded like he had no empathy. He didn't care about the people at all. And it really made him look like a jerk. And that's when I started realizing the power of interviews. When things are not going well, it's not about me. It's more about like the audience in the film. Did you come across any of those kind of interviews? And did you use any of that in your film?
Ultimately, in the final cut, no, I don't. No. I would say probably not. But there were certainly certain elements of that kind of thing. Particularly like I said, this guy from the Hanford thing. The thing that hit me, what he said about actually was interesting because we we worked with this one guy who lived near Hanford, Tom Bailey, who was basically one of the first ever downwinders, essentially. And the health conditions he had were absolutely he's had were absolutely insane. Unfortunately, he passed away during filming, which is unfortunate. So yeah, but this guy is absolutely incredible, and the health effects are just insane. There's something very famous called the Green Run, which is basically where they were refining plutonium, but they were doing it before 100 days, where you could kind of like cool down and cool down the uranium. Sorry, and what ends up happening when you do that before this 100 days, you basically just start putting out radioactive iodine all up into the atmosphere, and this is exactly what they did at Hanford, and it just spread across the whole of Washington State and like Oregon and stuff. Just absolutely, terrible. It caused a lot of cancers. It's basically this radioactive iodine when it gets taken in by the body. Uh, the body treats it in the same way that it would do any normal iodine, which is it sends it to the thyroid, which is where your body stores iodine. So a lot of these people were getting thyroid cancer, and thyroid cancer rates spiked dramatically at that time. The thing that kind of interested me was this guy that we interviewed. He lived near Hanford as well, and so it was kind of like, oh, it's interesting. Did you have any health effects like Tom? Because he's had the most unbelievable health effects. And he's like, no, nothing, absolutely nothing, not a problem. Like, okay, that's weird. Like, that's really weird because it's radiation affects people differently in different ways and stuff. So some people are unaffected and others. So it kind of like it makes sense. It's fine. It's fair enough. And he was so adamant and determined to just be like, no, there's nothing wrong with it. It's all fine. It wasn't such a big deal. Blah blah blah. And then it kind of twigged on me. It was like, hold on a minute. What about your family? And he goes, yeah, they all had thyroid cancer. It's like, you just like, how can you, where is the morality? Where is it, like the morality in this that you can possibly stand there and be like, it was no problem. Yeah, but my whole family got thyroid cancer. It's just, yeah, ignore that. Like, come on. Like, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was in the cut for the longest
So
time. And I actually got advised to take it out because it didn't fit quite properly. And it was kind of, yeah. So it was a bit of a thing. Yeah. Yeah. It took me well, the thing is I had an editor originally, who, um, I for want of a better word, really just screwed me over basically, and we ended up getting rid of him, and it became a thing of like, we just don't have the money to pay for another editor, so it's like the only other person that knows this footage as well as him and me is me. Um, so it was I'll approach this and take it on. I've edited in the past, but I've never like on a professional level kind of thing. And my idea of hell actually was the idea of editing a feature documentary. That's always been something I promised I would never do, and it was like, well, I put myself in this situation. It's kind of a self-fulfilled prophecy, I think.
it's hard, man. I in my past, I was brought in to help a documentary filmmaker that was going to air on PBS because his editor bailed on him and left a mess. And at the time, I was a Final Cut Pro editor. This is 7 before it became X.
Yeah.
And I went out to Phoenix, and everything, when the guy shot everything was labeled untitled. That's just the way it was back in the day, because you had to actually capture it from tape. It wasn't, on disc.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it was like untitled 1, 2, 3, 4, it just kept going. And every time he would do that, he would do a new folder with the same thing. So you had all these same named editing, or clips in different folders. So when they're in the actual project, they're all like, it just wouldn't like, so I come in, I don't know anything, and I'm trying to piece everything together, and it was just insane. Eventually I got it done, but he was mad at me for, I don't know why, because his editor, I guess I guess he was just putting it onto me. But I understand like how, like when editors leave and you don't have that connection, it could be just incredibly messy.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I had to start from scratch. It ended up taking me a year to edit this thing. But it's working in between other jobs and stuff, being able to try and like survive and stuff as well. Of course, so it's a thing, but it was um, it was incredibly taxing. I went through 16 different iterations of this thing. My entire wall in my office became just this sea of post-it notes that constantly kept moving around. One of the nicest parts of actually finishing the edit was just very ceremoniously ripping all of these post-it notes down and just being like, "Yes, it's done." You know, it was kind of fun.
So there's no like, I could have done better. Like, as an editor, that's how you think. You're like, ooh, I should leave this. Like, what was that process like? You were just like, let's go.
Oh no, yeah, man. There was definitely like, I mean, like I said, we went through like 16 different iterations of this thing. It started out like it was like categorically like, kind of like, okay, uranium miners and like Hiroshima and downwinders, atomic veterans, and it's like, it doesn't work. We need something else. And then it was all this kind of like, okay, we need this, and then we ultimately landed on the thing that I needed, this narrative thread through, which became Alan Owen, and it became the, what was like the why now, why this now, why now kind of thing, is like, which was the current aspect of it, of the nuke blood scandal, which is the case that Alan's fighting against the MOD. And it was kind of like, okay, well, that's our thread through that pulls us through. And Alan became this kind of narrator without being a narrator kind of thing. He became the thread. And that's ultimately where it ended up going. And I think that's really what works. It was the best way of telling this story, really, I think. I don't know. I'm not an editor. um, I did have some advice
It's a
from
lot.
some. Yeah, I did have some. I was very lucky. I was working on an Amazon doc series, and they had an editor on that one who actually Oscar award winner, and it was kind of I ended up asking a lot of advice from him, and he was very kind to kind of help me. And then a couple of other editor friends who were kind of like getting notes from back and forth and trying to like put it together. So it had some really good advice. It just didn't have the the workhorse behind it. I was the workhorse, unfortunately.
Yeah, workhorse is understatement. That it's really. I mean, I think about what you put together with that much footage. It's absolutely amazing. So hats off to you. Oh,
Yeah,
put it back on real quick.
I'd never do it again. I can tell you now. Like, I don't know. I think I'm going back to scripted and just
Yep.
sticking there at this point. I don't know. I need to make a comedy after this one.
Yeah, you do. It's like you need that balance.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Need to make some. Yeah, I've got a few scripts and stuff and everything lined up. So we've got the next projects kind of like lined up and stuff. But annoyingly, there is a couple of stories that I want to tell on a narrative structure that is about some of the things from this subject matter, which is great. But then again, it's like heavy drama, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do that right now. I kind of like, I need a break in between. We need to do something funny or action or something.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like that. Being a filmmaker, that's kind of like where you are, because a lot of our life is influenced or what we know, and you gain so much knowledge about this subject matter. So and not just about the nuclear blast or the nuclear testing, but also emotionally, like about all how these people felt and what they went through and all the causes. So, man, you are just like a wealth of drama. Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
gonna say.
yeah. I mean, it's been interesting actually, because like you end up, after 4 years, you end up. I'm not saying that like an expert or anything, but you do become like kind of like some stuff. You know some useful stuff. So we actually
Yeah.
we ended up with the film back in January. We screened in Parliament. We got sponsored for a screening of the documentary in Parliament in the UK, and we gained cross-party support from all these people. And then I got invited back to Parliament for a talk on the UK's latest nuclear weapons like stuff with all their B-52 bombers and all this kind of thing. This whole mess of stuff, and it was quite interesting being in the Houses of Parliament, like what the hell am I doing here? Like, I'm a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Why am I talking about nuclear
Wow.
weapons? Like, what's going on? Like, this isn't right. What decision did I make here that ended up here? It's a weird one.
So tell me about the film festival side, or has it made the film
Mm.
festival circuit? And was that like for you?
So it's interesting. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, film festival wise, we have had like no luck with this film. And
Whoa.
whether it is because it's political, whether it's because nuclear weapons, because some of the feedback we had from some of the programmers that I know and stuff actually was the fact that one of them was quite interesting. It was like, has it got talking heads in it? It was like, yeah, it's got some talking heads. They went, we're not interested. It was like, oh, okay, well that's that done then. And that's a major festival, so it's like, oh, forget that. But film festival wise, we just really, weirdly or not, I don't know. We haven't had much luck, so I kind of put it on my shoulders. Back in like December, January, I was like, you know what, forget it. I don't care about the festival circuit now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to release this theatrically myself. I'm just going to get it out there, and we're going to do
Good for
this. And
you.
I ended up booking 20 cinemas myself, most of them on like box office split and stuff, and actually like proper deals and stuff. And so we had this, we prepped for this theatrical release that was going to go through March and April. And then a theatrical distributor actually saw what I'd been doing, and he was like, you've done, how the hell have you basically done this in this short amount of time? It's like, stop what you're doing, we want to take it on, like we're going to help. And that's what's happening now. So then that's where we've now got this theatrical release in May, with these guys instead, who are now getting us much more cinemas and doing a much better job than I did, I think. So
Well, hats off again. Hats off to you. I gotta stop saying that. But that's impressive because
I'll take it.
I know the film festival circuit is frustrating. And even when I was submitting films to film festival, I realized after talking to a few people, it's really about relationships,
Oh, yeah.
and holding, like, there are certain film festivals that if you interned, that you would have a spot later down the road. And it's just like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense.
I
And
mean,
I had a friend, I interviewed 2 Ukrainian women who did a war documentary about Ukraine, and they had the same issues. They were having a lot of pushback, saying like, and they didn't know what it was. They're like, is it because it's political? Is it because it's too slow? Or, are people tired of hearing about Ukraine? And they never got answers. And so
yeah.
it's really frustrating as a filmmaker. So
I mean,
I'm happy to hear that you're doing that.
yeah, I mean, like, I mean, so some of the, not that we've got mostly like general feedback rubbish, you know what it's like from like festivals and stuff. And I think it's not really, you don't get like specific feedback a lot. Frankly, from my perspective, it's kind of like, and getting a little bit more of an inside scoop from certain programmers um, and different industry people and distributors and stuff kind of thing. They're just, it's a different landscape now than what it was, even like pre-pandemic, kind of thing. It's just an entirely different landscape. Like Slamdance, for instance, is kind of a good example of like we did try for Slamdance, a little bit of a weird shot, but like give it a shot for that one particularly. But they came back with the general feedback thing of like they had 10,000 submissions for 100 films that they program. Like that's a 1% acceptance rate. Like how, the amount of time that it takes to go through all of that content,
Yeah.
absolutely bonkers. So there is an element of like, how much of it is it actually properly getting watched, and of course it's subjective
Yeah.
as well, kind of thing. So it's like, realistically, it's probably getting watched maybe in full, probably partially, once by one person, and subjectively, if it doesn't fit something from their perspective, that's it, now it's gone. And it's like, and if you don't know people from those festivals and stuff, you don't know the programmers, you don't have some kind of connection to it, your chances are pretty much zero for any of the major film festivals, really. I would say at this point, honestly, it's yeah, it's difficult. The landscape is really, really weird. Um, yeah, it's an odd one. The thing is that gets me though is with this particular thing is like, it's a weird thing because it's been proven time and time again that this particular subject is something that people want to see, they want to know about. It's kind of crazy because like you look at, you know, just as a for instance, that film I mentioned, the short doc that Vice put out, their most viewed video ever, still is, right? It's gone viral multiple times in the last 10 years that it's been out, right? So that's clearly a good example. Oppenheimer grossed over $1 billion, made a bunch of Oscars and everything. It's clearly something interesting. Turning Point by Netflix. It was in their top 10. It was one of their longest running top 10 pieces. Turning Point about nuclear for like weeks and weeks and weeks. It did incredibly well. So much so they then did Turning Point on the Vietnam War. I think it was actually the next version of Turning Point they did. So it's like there's clearly an audience for this thing. So it kind of bewilders me that it's like that. Yeah, it just very odd. It's very, very odd. And even with the screenings that we've done so far, we did a private screening in London. We did the world premiere in Leicester Square in London back in March. And also did the parliamentary screening as well. It's been honestly fairly easy getting people to come to this film, and it's been like incredibly well received. And it's like it doesn't make sense to me that it wouldn't be a good you know fit for festivals necessarily. But there's so much to it, isn't there? Really.
Yeah, so I always have crazy ideas. So just blow this off if you want.
No,
Have you ever thought about have you ever thought about like screening it like in the desert where a lot of the testing was around? Obviously not in the testing, but like around the areas that are some of the affected, like in Nevada, some maybe in Utah, especially with some of the downwinders.
Yeah, I mean, like, so this, the theatrical distributor that came on board is actually very good at like event cinema. So that's what I'm kind of trying to work with him on particularly. We have actually just kind of yesterday actually got a screening up in Australia, where the UK did some of its testing as well. So that's actually happening, which is quite good. Nevada would be a really good one. That would be kind of like an interesting one. Try and do that near the test site kind of thing. That'd be quite fun.
You're giving me ideas now, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but
Right.
like I'm thinking, like, does Burning Man have a film festival, or does
Oh,
like
that'd be good.
Aether? There are a few out in the desert that have these like gatherings, and it'd be so easy to put together like a projector and project it at night or whatever. And I have a few people that I know that go to these events, and they're always looking to build off it. And I'm like, maybe that could be something to do. So yeah, uh, it's fantastic. I love this kind of like back and forth, and you're giving me ideas now. So thank you.
Hey, that's a good idea, mate. Hey, look, yeah, we'll chat more about that another time, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So a few other things. I know time is starting to creep up on us, but so tell me about like when you first got started. I want to go back into who you are as a filmmaker. When you first got started, what was the thing that attracted you to be a storyteller? Was it first as a cinematographer, telling stories through your camera, or did you see it more as a documentary filmmaker where you wanted to tell stories in that manner?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see myself as a documentary filmmaker, honestly. This was, like I said, I've worked as a cinematographer for almost like 14 years, and it's mostly, for the most part, been scripted stuff, TV and features kind of thing, which I love. I love having a plan and going in with that kind of thing, I think. But, this particular project was just something that I always wanted to tell. So it was like, okay, I'm going to take this on. That's been a thing. Documentary wise, I have been shooting quite a lot of stuff for Amazon, which has been really good. It's been very interesting. Some incredible people to work with, like creatives, directors, producers, and stuff who've been fantastic. But I got started actually. My story's a little bit of a kind of weird one. It's everyone's is kind of thing. Their movement into it seems to be quite interesting. I didn't do film school or anything. It's all self-taught and stuff. But I was a photographer since I was a teenager. Really, not a good one, terrible. But loved cameras and stuff. I didn't really ever kind of register as like would be a career or anything at all. And I've trained martial arts for like the last 20 something years. And I originally started as a martial arts instructor. I dropped out of college and started teaching martial arts. I trained like a monk for like, for years and years and years, essentially. And then that and I ended up basically moving to London. I became an actor by pure chance, and that was always something I kind of wanted to do for a little bit. And then that turned into stunts because of the martial arts background, and then stunts became a thing of like, well, we started making our own films because of like that kind of work and stuff. And I became the guy with the camera because of having the photography experience. And then I realized like, oh damn, this is the thing that I love the most. Um, and so there became a career in cinematography. And then through that there's been opportunities to direct, and which I love doing, and I think um that's something to pursue more now, certainly, but it has to be the right story. I'm not really interested in telling. I'm not going out there to do it for money. I'm doing it because I want to tell something that I find interesting, which was like this story, and some of the other things I've got kind of you know lined up that may or may not happen. Who knows? So yeah, it's interesting. I've always kind of loved cinematography though, so that's kind of been the that's the bread and butter, and then directing when it kind of comes up. That's yeah.
Yeah, you just said a lot right there, and it. So I'm glad to hear all that, because that proves that you are a talent freak. Doing all those different things. And the funny thing about it is, a friend of mine who I'm going to be staying with in Vegas. His name is Eric Jacobus, and he started a group called the Stunt People. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
Okay.
They were very famous YouTube kind of like stunt people, and then he started shooting his own films. And he loved Jackie Chan and Hong Kong cinema, but he also loved Charlie Chaplin. And so there was like this great comedy with martial arts, and he's been doing it for like over 20 years now. And I worked with him on a feature film that we shot that was like a serious noir Hong Kong film. It was the funniest thing ever. But that's where we got introduced to each other, and now he's doing mocap. He bought mocap system, and he's now the actor behind Kratos, like all the punches and everything from the God of War, the
nice
video game.
Yeah.
It's so cool to hear that, as far as like a stunt person going into acting and then being a cinematographer. And as a cinematographer, tell me about like, what are some of the things that you love being a cinematographer? Do you love working with lights? Do you love, using different angles for, perspectives? What is it about the cinematography that just, you gravitate towards?
Oh, it's a bit of everything, really. I think it's really nice is when some like bigger sets kind of thing. It's such a collaborative effort, and the amount of like work, the insane amount of work that goes into something so small. It always makes me laugh as some of the most iconic shots in cinema history are on screen for less than half a second. you know and you just like, and you think of all the effort and time and just that went into getting that shot, and it's literally less than half a second, but everybody knows that shot. Like, I mean, for instance, like the one from ET, where he's cycling, they're flying through the air past a big full moon kind of thing, and it's like, that is one of the most iconic shots of Spielberg's, and it literally left, it's half a second of screen time. And it's like all the effort that went into that, and it's just like, it's barely anything. I think it's really something quite amazing to experience when you have that kind of thing. I love just working with people on like building this like kind of thing, and when everyone's there and they kind of, you get that kind of thing of like, everyone's like, oh, that looks amazing. It's kind of like, oh, I'm kind of happy. That's kind of fun. I remember one music video I did actually that it's terrible, but like, it was such an experience. We planned it as a one-er, a one-er. It's actually 7 shots cut up, and they kind of transition one to the other kind of thing. And it was such a huge collaborative effort because we're doing this on like minimal kind of money. The budget just got slashed and slashed and slashed and slashed, and it was like, oh my god, this is just now becoming impossible. We shouldn't have pitched a one-er as this thing. And it was beautiful. I had like we had Alexa Mini with like Panavision C series, which are my favorite lenses, and we had this like, but then all the budget got cut. So then we were like, okay, well, we've got the crane, like, but we got to like, it's now this janky crane that's like on a Western dolly kind of thing being pulled across a not so flat floor, and it's just like, oh my god, it's all kind of mad. But working with everyone on that, I remember like it would take so many takes to get the shot, but when you got it, the adrenaline rush of like, like was just like, it was amazing. And it was from everyone on the team, because it was like you've got, I've got like 10 people moving set pieces, we've got another 4 people moving the crane and like grabbing this, and then like all the, just all coming together at the same point. That's a beautiful thing. I kind of enjoy that more than even seeing the results of stuff, honestly. That's kind of yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. What is your, as a cinematographer, what is your favorite shot? Is it like a wide shot? Is it, all those other shots? I'm not going to go
Yeah.
run them through, but what is like
Yeah.
your style that you set up? You're like, oh, I love this shot.
I don't know. It all depends. It all depends on what it's kind of the shots you get lost in, isn't it? It's whatever that kind of doesn't draw attention to itself. I think the best film I've seen for that recently, I just got completely lost in and didn't watch a film and stuff, and I'm always kind of like, oh, that's interesting, and like I kind of remember things and like take things on, and like, oh, I might like steal a little bit of that, or inspired by that, or that's fun, or whatever. Or you kind of like start breaking things down and like, oh, okay, um but the one I just got completely, utterly lost in recently was that Project Hail Mary. Like, I don't know what there was so many decisions made on this thing and so many layers to it on a visual level. And not just like actual layers, but like layers on how they're telling the story and everything. It was just like, I just got completely, forgot completely about how they were doing things, why they were doing things. It was so funny because then I saw a lot of BTS that Greg Fraser was doing with the film recently, and I was like, oh man, that's crazy. I didn't even think about what they were doing for that, because I was just so lost in it. And that's just like, that's amazing. Those are my favorite shots. The ones that kind of draw you out and like pull your attention is like, yeah, that's what I think you can never go wrong with a good shot on like a good tight on an actor. If you've got a really good actor, someone really like incredible, you get those kind of things. That's kind of yeah, those are the ones you get lost in, more so than the beautiful big wides where you lit everything perfectly and it looks fantastic. Yeah, they're fun to create, but like you don't get lost in them in the same ways you do with like just a tight on a really good actor.
Yeah, that's true. So I want to go back into just your documentary for a little bit. There are a few questions to wrap it up. One is, what was the most difficult thing about this project for you?
So many. It's not anything that's been easy, man. It's just, oh my god. I mean, put it into perspective, we got like no funding, everything fell through. We I ended up losing my editor, so it was kind of like I had to edit myself, which was a nightmare. I almost went bankrupt during filming. There is a very big broadcaster that um, essentially copied everything we did after we pitched to them, and then had the nerve to ask me to license my footage before we released it. And I was like, are you kidding me? So that was difficult. Trying to wear so many hats on like a global kind of thing, the logistical element of it was kind of insane. But the thing I kind of as much as there's all this like crazy difficulty in it, I would say the thing that has absolutely been absolutely beautiful is all the people that have helped.
Yeah.
Pretty much every member of crew that I've had for this, which is not many, but it's like people that have helped, have all done this for either nothing or deferral. They've just, everyone has put in so much, because I think ultimately it's kind of like they've seen how much I've put in. They've gone like, I want help, and that, like, inspiring people to do that. That's something that's been really really good. So I think for all the difficulty and all the problems and all the nightmares that have come up in creating this thing, the nice side of it is that you see the kind of like the compassion and the like amazing nature that people can bring and like help you with when you need it. So
Well, yeah, I think you just answered my next question, was like, what was the best thing about this project?
Oh yeah, well that was the best thing. Oh no, actually no. The best thing was going to Hawaii. That was great. Yeah. Oh, and Kangaroo Island. That's amazing. That was a fun place. They're really good.
That part of the documentary was just like, it was mind blowing. It was like, it was also one of those things where you just felt sick too, and how, you know, the government took advantage of other people that are not us, even though they did the same thing to us as well.
Yeah.
No,
it's
I
great.
don't want to go down that road.
No. Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And the last thing is, yeah, we've done enough. The last thing is, what's next for you in this project?
In this project, yeah, so we've got a UK cinema release on May 14th. So we're releasing a ton of cinemas through May, and there's going to be a kind of second wave through June, because there's hopefully um Alan and Lab Rats and stuff have hopefully done something really good for that community, and that should be coming out in the news very soon, and we should all be kind of like, you know, that should be kind of a fun thing that comes out roughly the same time as the theatrical release of the documentary, so that's going to be really cool. We've got a load of broadcast sales that we're just delivering stuff for all over the world, so that's really great as well. And then yeah, we'll see where it ends up after. You know, the first window is going to be a lot of like broadcast, and then the second window will probably be like streaming stuff wherever we put that out. So be interesting to see where that goes. Yeah.
Excellent. And some of the reason why I asked for what's next, a lot of times, you know, with documentaries such as yours, especially, it impacts you. Like, you want to do something to help. And a lot of times the documentaries, I don't know what to do. Like, I watch it, share it with other people, but it's more about like, do you have any call to action or anything as a viewer that can help my anxiety and my going like, man, I want to do something to stand up and help.
Do you know what it is? Our call to action ultimately was our main ethos was to get as many eyes on this as possible. So just trying to get, and you know, my kind of idea was that I wanted to kind of inspire people to have the same reaction that I did, and for the audiences that have seen it so far, that has 100% worked. So I'm super happy about that. But the call to action ultimately actually was the fact that it was a little bit more UK specific, was the fact that the UK was using taxpayer money to deny veterans, who were, a lot of them, conscripted, compensation. Like, they are using your money.
Ridiculous.
It's insanity. They are using your money to pay for their lawyers. Basically, the tactic essentially was make the legal battle last as long as possible, because then the victims run out of money. We just use taxpayer money. It's kind of just, then keep it going. So the ultimately, the thing was, you should be disgusted at how the government is using your money, you know? And that does apply to the US. That does apply to Australia. It applies to all of these testing countries, not Australia, but it applies to all these testing countries. So ultimately, pay attention to it, watch the film, and if you're interested, you can follow people like Lab Rats, ICANN. They're really good organizations that have not only, they've endorsed the film, which is beautiful for me and really nice, but they do some incredible work that is like really, really necessary.
You said a lot today, Daniel, and you have done amazing. Wow. Yeah. No, it's not a down thing by saying you said a lot. It's saying that the work that you put into your project is just mind blowing to me. Because I understand what it takes to put something together, but not on that scale. Like, my scale was much smaller, but I'm really impressed with, you know, the work that you did, but the reason you did it. And I wish more people were like you in this world, that would put their heart into things that matter and that can help other people. And I'm just so grateful that we had this conversation.
Cheers. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you.
So thank you, Daniel, for taking time to join me on today's show and share your insights on directing our planet, the people, my blood, and the human legacy of nuclear testing. And if you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, or hitting that bell and share with your friends to help more creative minds discover these stories. And your support truly makes a difference. But be sure to check out Daniel's work at everlockproductions.com and follow him on Instagram and YouTube, and all of his links will be in the description below. And if you want to know more of my work, visit talentfreaks.com, where you can explore some of my video work as well as my current passion for photography. And if you have any ideas or guests that you'd like to see on the show, don't hesitate to reach out. I love bringing fresh perspectives to the podcast. Now, until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and stay curious.